What's up guys, my name is Hunter and thank you for taking the time out of your day to click on my video. Today I'm going to be talking about the different cars that I've drove and owned in the past. So when I first turned 15, I wasn't that much into cars, and that's really because I never was able to drive before. So that's probably the biggest part of why I didn't really like cars that much. So I ended up taking my permit test in my grandpa's Honda CR-V, and that's what I drove for when I was learning. And then when I finally was able to drive, I took the hand-me-down cars from my parents. And because we were a family and my parents never really cared about cars either, we just had two minivans that I alternated using. So the first car that I ended up driving was a Plymouth Grand Voyager, and that was my daily driver once I turned 16. And then I had a Chrysler Town & Country. So those were the two cars that I mainly alternated between. So pretty much I drove those two cars up until my freshman year of college when I finally was able to buy my own car. And really the reason behind this was my parents were paying for my tuition for college, and like they didn't want me to waste money on a car if they were paying for college, because I could pay on my own pretty much. But I was able to convince them to get cheaper cars. So I had been living in Fargo because that's where I go to school, and I was searching the internet for like a couple months in a row just looking for a cheap Mustang that I could afford. So I ended up finding a V6 Mustang. And I know it's a V6, but I wanted to get like kind of the entry-level car at first, and I thought the 2005 Mustang V6 was a really good car for its value. It was 210 horsepower, which is low, but it's a lot better than the minivan that I was driving. And when I finally found this car, the colorway was perfect. Like, it was red with the two white stripes, and it was in Minneapolis, so I had my parents go and pick it up. And I was waiting until the end of the school year till I could see it. So I just had this one picture on my phone, and I would look at that like every day, and I was so excited to finally go home and get to drive it. So driving that Mustang around, I felt like an absolute boss, and that's just because I was driving a minivan before that, and now I was driving a Mustang. I know it was a V6, but you know, when you're not really a car person, somebody sees a Mustang and they're like, oh, it's a Mustang. They don't really care if it's a V8 or a V6, and I was kind of like that person at first. I didn't care if it was a V8 or a V6, I had a Mustang. But eventually, there started to be like transmission issues with the car, where when you put the car from reverse into neutral or vice versa, there would start to be like a heavy clunking sound that was going on. So I ended up selling that car, and I made a profit on it of like $1,500, which was nice because that set me up to buy a even newer car or a better car after that. But I didn't really have the opportunity because I needed a car, so I ended up just looking for the cheapest car I could buy, and I ended up buying a $400 Buick Century 1999, and that car was one of the best cars I've got for $400. I feel like it's one of the best cars anybody could get for $400 just because of what good quality it was in for $400. So I drove my Buick for a few months just while I was looking for another car to get, like my Mustang. And that's when I decided I wanted to get a Nissan 350Z. I'd seen it online and I was like, I really like how this car looks, and that was like my main selling factor. And then I looked up the power that it has, and I was like, wow, I could get like a 2007 Mustang V8, or I could get a 2008 Nissan 350Z, and they both have about the same amount of power. I was like, I really like how this Nissan looks, and it's actually a little bit cheaper than the Mustang, so I decided to go for that car. So I ended up looking for a few months, and that's when I found the car that I have today in Chicago. So I took my Buick and I drove with my dad, and we drove to Chicago. I drove from Fargo, so it was a 10-hour drive. I drove straight there on like a Friday. I got the car, I drove back that same night, and it was like over 20 hours of driving in one day. So it was a challenge, but I was so excited to finally get my new car. And driving that on the highway home, I felt like I was in a Lamborghini, because going from the Mustang to a Buick, those are like land yachts compared to the Nissan. So I ended up driving that car until it got to be winter time, and then I drove the Buick, and then it got to be summertime again, and that's when I drove the Nissan. But in the winter, during that winter, I decided I wanted another car, and I wanted a manual because one, I thought it would make good content for YouTube because I wanted to start stepping up my YouTube game, and then two, I thought it would just be fun to drive manual because I never have. And I ended up buying a Toyota Celica GT, and I never introduced that car to the channel because I never got to work quite right, but I will make another video on it in the future and you'll learn more about it. So the only two cars I have left right now are my Nissan 350Z and my Buick Century. Buick Century stopped working because I had it sitting and something went wrong with it. I think it's just getting old and maybe the wires are going bad, but I'm going to take a look at it and see if I can fix it. If not, just gonna get rid of it. It was $400. I'll get like some parts money, 150 bucks for it. So when I go back, it will be winter and I'll need a winter car, so I will be buying a new car when I get back, and I'll still keep the Nissan at least till next summer, and we'll see where I go from there. If you like this video where I just kind of tell stories, I'd suggest you hit that subscribe button. If not, thank you for watching, and leave a comment what you like, what you don't like, what you want to see, and hit that like button, and thanks. Bye.